and tossed until it seems you had gone. But here you are with the dawn. Wish I'd forget you, but you're here to stay. It seems I met you when my love went away.
Welcome to Nights at the Neptune, everybody. How are you? Yeah, it's really great to see you. My name's Martin Sepulveda. I work with Seattle Theater Group, and I have the pleasure of working with this great program called Nights of the Neptune. That's why we're all here tonight. It's a free Thursday night of art from our own community. I'm really excited. And yeah. What more could you ask for, right? So this is a really cool program. Every week, starting the last week of June, we've been having a free show here at the Neptune on a Thursday night. It's been featuring local artists who have a message of peace, love, social justice, equality, really great things that's been bringing our community together to just enjoy each other and learn. And tonight is no different. We have a beautiful show for you. This wouldn't be possible, though, without support from our sponsors. So please thank the Neshholm Family Foundation and the Norcliffe Foundation for opening the doors. Before I tell you about tonight's show, Jeff, definitely know that we have a free show next Thursday, and the next Thursday after that, check us out at stgpresents.org, Nights at the Neptune. Remember that. It's amazing stuff. So tonight, I am going to get out of the way because we have an amazing leader, Marissa Tanamura, who will tell you all about tonight's show, When Women Swing. Women Who Swing, excuse me.
Ooh, good evening. Oh, they told me to stand over here. Uh-oh. I'm not following directions already. Thanks for coming out to the show. To start off, I really want to do a couple thank yous to STG, Martine, and the production crew. It's amazing to have these wonderful theaters in our community, but also that they open these venues to the community groups to run programs in these fantastic, beautiful spaces. The other two big thank yous that I'd like to give, even though they are not here, much of tonight's presentation comes from two documentaries that have been released in the past few years, one last year and one about 2 years ago, called The Girls in the Band. And so I'd like to thank Judy Chaikin, who is the director and producer, for allowing us to use clips from that documentary, as well as Carol Bash, who finished a documentary last year on Mary Lou Williams, the woman who swings the band. And part of the reason I don't have to talk so much is because they did such a great job of compiling amazing stories and footage to share with you. The other thing I would like to say is that maybe tonight there'll be a little bit of biography. You'll hear a lot about Mary Lou Williams as she sort of, in the scheme of how we thought about this program, that we found her story and the overarching breadth of her career to be somewhat reflective of women in the music industry, and particularly in jazz. I think you will hear stories from the videos that are echoed by some of our members who grew up, in the last 20 to 30 years, we're told the same thing. And even today, when we talk to high schoolers, there are still high schoolers who say, I've been pushed towards a certain instrument because I'm a girl. And so to know that these stories have been being told or not being told for a very long time. And so we are so privileged to be able to present this to you this evening. So please enjoy as we start with a clip. This is The Women Who Swing.
Thank you. What's the name of that?
That's just playing.
We used to sit by the Atwater Kent radio and listen to the music coming out of the hotels around Boston.
My dad would take us to the dances and stand outside the dance hall with me on his shoulder, and I would look through the window and see the trumpet players, and they would be playing the trumpet, you know, and do-what, 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 and I like that.
And my father wanted me to find the sound that I liked, and that's what I would learn to play. So we listened, and one night I said, oh, I like that, and that was the saxophone.
I started to play saxophone when I was a senior in high school. They didn't have many girls on instruments. They were violins, harpists, pianists.
When I was about 9, we started a family band with Mother on piano and Dad on his instruments, my older brother on his, and I did the vocals and played my trumpet.
They wanted me to play violin. Well, I'm kind of lazy. I said, no, I don't feel like holding a violin on my shoulder all day long. I want to play something else. He said, well, what do you want to play? I said, I'd like to play trombone. I'd like to see that slide go up and down.
It was an exciting time, but you always had that one thing to confront you. The agent would come up to me and say, we can't use that girl. She's, you got to get somebody that looks better. And don't forget to smile at the women. How could you smile with a horn in your mouth?
I did get a call from the Ada Leonard Orchestra, which was rehearsing and going to open at the Oriental Theater in Chicago. And I said yes, yes, and I was so excited. After some rehearsals that week, we were shown our costume. And out comes this god-awful pink thing with flounces, and it had all these flares and pink ruffles, and I was mortified. I'm a professional. I wear a skirt, a sweater, or a blouse, a white blouse with a little black tie. I don't wear pink ruffles. And I hated that gown with a passion.
Females were not looked on with the same attitude, shall we use the word attitude, as male musicians were.
Well, most of them treated us as novelties.
It was unusual, and people thought it was cute, you know.
Mary Lou was marginalized because she didn't play up her sexuality. She was further marginalized because she was a dark-skinned black woman at that.
Well, one of the sad facts is the darker you are, the more severe the prejudices against you. As beautiful as she was, the commercial lens saw her and wasn't sure that she could make the grade.
You know, from a physical standpoint, it would seem that women in music do best when they play the piano. And this is probably because it takes less physical effort to play the piano than, say, a wind instrument, or for that matter, the drums. That's just a theory, of course, but the fact remains that there are quite a few girls playing mighty good piano, but almost none who play good trumpet.
Ladies and gentlemen, here to tell the musical story this evening, these are the MoodSwings. Want to tell you just a tiny bit about us before we get started. We're a community group. We're all volunteer. We play anywhere from 2 to 3 shows a month, different venues, retirement homes, and third place books, and all the park shows in the summer. So when the opportunity for us came to be able to tell a little bit of our story in some of the history of jazz, of course, that was very exciting to us. We are actually a 21-member big band swing band comprised of all female members. And I like to note that it's very unusual in itself, but also that we have 2 of those kinds of bands in Seattle, and I think that's awesome that we have 2 all-female bands, SWOJO and ourselves. So if you have, yes. If this is the first time you're seeing us or the first time you're hearing their name, please go out and see more shows. We're going to start off our show a little bit on the chronological side with the birth of jazz, which is in the blues. We're doing a selection that was, I guess, attributed to Ma Rainey, who was known as Mother of the Blues, and recorded this song in 1924. And what's particularly interesting about CC Ryder is that if you look at all the meanings of the song, it was probably originally sung mostly by men, as CC or Easy Riders were describing women who were, I guess what we'd call now sexually liberated, women who knew what they wanted and went and got it. And in 1920 something, that was not such an acceptable thing. So to hear the lyrics, which may be a little startling in their violence, sung by a woman, maybe takes a new meaning when you hear a man singing about a woman versus the woman in this story who you'll hear sung. Let me please introduce Miss Sophia Kowalski here to sing CC Ryder.
gonna find me a pistol. Just as long as I am tall. Lord, 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 I'll shoot my man and catch the cannonball. If he won't have me, he won't have no gal at all. Where'd you stay last night? Lord, 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 shoes ain't buttoned, clothes don't fit you right. You didn't come home till the sun was shining bright. Thank you.
All I did was stay up nights and days playing. I was too busy to even pay attention to how anyone would treat me. You just have to be as good or better than the man.
John spoke to me and says, "My wife can really play the piano. I want you to hear it sometime." But I had a band full of men, and the musicians didn't want women to be in the band. In 1929, recording executive Jack Kapp came down from Chicago looking for artists for the Brunswick label. Everybody showed up but Marion Jackson on piano. We'd have to start soon or blow it. John Williams said, "How about getting Mary Lou?" This was an emergency. I told John, okay.
When I arrived, they gave me solos to play. And Kapp must have liked them because he set up a date to record the band.
Jack Kapp summons the Kirk band to come to Chicago and record. But there was some resistance to carrying her. And Kirk went without her. And they arrive in Chicago and Jack says, "Where's Mary Lou Williams?" And Kirk says, "Well, we don't need her." Jack says, "Oh yeah, you need her."
Then came a wire telling me to meet the band right away. I knew they wouldn't send for me unless something was in the wind. So by next day, I was on my way to Chicago.
When she arrives in Chicago, she goes right into the studio. And the engineer says, "Play something." and Mary Lou just begins to improvise at the piano.
Once I start writing, I don't even know where I am until I finish the composition. I never wonder about how it is that I can hear music. I just know that I do.
Mary Lou Williams was not only a fine pianist, but also one of the finest arrangers of any period.
When I first saw her, I just was fascinated by this woman who played piano. I heard her on records, on radio, and I saw her perform in the Howard Theater. She broke it up, sitting at the piano and wailing. She played and she wrote some things that were difficult, but they were swinging.
When you listen to Mary's idea, you hear how Mary Lou brought a very different bluesy, hard swinging sound to the big band format. Her sound, her arrangements moves Andy Kirk to another stage of the game. He's there with Count Basie. He's there with Duke Ellington. He needed Mary Lou as much as Mary Lou needed him.
This was the one band that had a woman in a key position, the key position. You might go to her and say, you know, Mary, I haven't been featured in the last 2 sessions, man. Can't I have some space on this? So she's in a position of power.
I did hear tell that there might be some dancers in the audience, and we did leave some floor space in front. We actually didn't plan any of that, but that's also an added bonus. I think there might be some swing dancers, so please feel free to get up and use the front space. You know, I have a question for the audience. How many of you have heard of Mary Lou Williams? Good, we have a few hands. You look at the program, how many of you knew a bunch of the composers and artists on the bill tonight? Okay. So this is a first introduction to some of them. I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully you'll clamor for more once we're done this evening. So Billie Holiday, I think, is far and wide known as her vocal uniqueness and prowess and her ability to sing phrases almost like an instrument, and was known that she didn't have much formal music training, but also taught herself a great deal while singing with bands. I think one of the most interesting things is to hear the end of the story where some of her earlier achievements were overshadowed and slowly fell apart due to alcoholism and depression. And maybe it's good to note that you know, it's not just a thing that happens to musicians, and to look very carefully at the fact that in addition to the sexism in the industry, she only ever made one film because of, pretty clearly because of the racial undertones in the film industry. As well as the fact that as a young child, there's a documented case that she had been, that her neighbor had attempted to rape her. And so all these factors that we don't hear about maybe sometimes leave us without the full picture of what is going on and why we don't hear a happy ending to the story, why not all musicians make it to their 80s with a lot of good things at the end of their life, holding all that in, and especially for women, and especially for women of color of the era. These are things to note when listening to this arrangement. We've actually chosen a non-vocal arrangement of one of her famous tunes, God Bless the Child, which I think probably many of you have heard her sing or somebody sing an incarnation of. Part of the reason we chose this arrangement, it's just a beautiful setting. It is given almost a choral, church-like arrangement that I believe sort of is a good memoriam of her work. So this is God Bless the Child by Billie Holiday and Arthur Herzog Jr.
Lil Armstrong and I were pretty good friends at that time. She was married to Louis Armstrong. Even she had a tough time.
We went to live in Chicago, and she invited me to her house. She played for me, and I played for her. And she wrote some very good tunes, one of which was a standard tune that everybody plays, Just for a Thrill.
Just for a thrill, you turn the sunshine into rain.
Just for a thrill, you filled my heart with pain.
To me you were my pride and joy. Oh, but to you I was merely a toy,
a little plaything you could toss around at will.
Lil Hardin was a very important influence for the whole history of the music. The Hot Five, that was her group that she really had conceptualized in terms of how the band functioned. And Louis Armstrong, as her very innovative, brilliant husband, became the leader of that group, but that was her group first.
Just for a thrill, you know that you...
I don't know why Lil Armstrong didn't get as much recognition as Louis did. Amazingly enough, she died while playing. She just fell off the bench and died. And I must say, it's a wonderful way to die, if you have to die.
But to me, you're still the only one, just for a thrill. You may...
Please welcome back Miss Sophia Kowalski.
Just for a thrill, you turn the sunshine into rain. Baby, for a thrill, you filled my life with nothing but pain. To me, you were my pride and joy, but to you, I was merely a toy, a plaything you could toss around at will. Oh, just for a thrill, you know that you've done me wrong. Just for a thrill,
33, we came to New York to record. I've never arranged so many things in my entire career. I must have done over 20 in 1 week, including Lotta Sax Appeal, Walking and Swinging, and Mary's Idea. In Walking and Swinging, I did something that was unheard of during that period. You had 3 saxophones. I needed a 4th, and I didn't have it. So I put a trumpet man in the hat so he would sound like a saxophone. And this was different and effective.
Walking and Swinging, which I think is one of the masterpieces of the swing era, it has so many rhythmic ideas. There are parts where she'll write using 8th notes, then there'll be other rhythms that have spaces. You never feel that she's predictable or that you know where she's going to go.
She didn't write notes just for the sake of writing notes. She wrote notes that had a great bearing on the tune that they were trying to interpret.
It is worth noting, as you hear different pieces from Ms. Williams this evening, that her musical career spanned over 50 years. So her earliest works were in the early 30s, and she passed away in the 1980s. So quite an accomplishment, and so you'll hear just a variety of styles. It is said that she was there for every era that we've had so far. So this is our presentation of Walkin' and Swingin'.
had this band that allowed us to go and play at the different fraternities and sorority dances for blacks in those days, you know. Pineywood School was a place for underprivileged black children. They got a better education. Mr. Jones saw Phil's Fraternities group on it. He says, well, I have enough girls here that play instruments. Why don't I start a girls' band too? Mr. Jones had some Mexican girls that, you know, he let come to Pineywood to go to school. We also had a Chinese girl there. And so one of the people that worked there said, she said, so why don't you call it the International Sweethearts of Rhythm? Because you got different nationalities. And that's how we got the name International Sweethearts of Rhythm.
When you're feeling low and you don't know what to do. When you're feeling low and you don't know what to do. Just stay in the groove, let nothing bother you.
Anna Mae Winburn, who was the director of the band, he was like a front for the orchestra, the band. She looked great all the time.
I had a male band in Omaha, Nebraska, called Anna Mae Winburn and her Cotton Club Boys. Then here come the Sweethearts to Omaha. And I said, oh, gee, aren't they cute? You know, they're beautiful, innocent girls, you know. So they said, Ray Lee Jones wants somebody to direct the Sweethearts of Rhythm. I said, gee, I don't know whether I can get along with that many women or not.
Anna Mae Winburn was like a mother figure to us. She helped us in meeting the public, mainly keeping away from the men. And in fact of the matter, she taught us the facts of life.
I don't know if they mentioned in that clip, but the International Sweethearts of Rhythm was really the first fully integrated band in the United States, and that most of the residents of the school that started at were African American. They also had Chinese and actually Hawaiian, I was told, and some other races, but also as years went through, they actually had a couple of white members, which if you watch the documentary, you'll find some very interesting stories about them traveling as a mixed race band. I did want to note that there is no composer attribution because we could not find one, so I'm going to attribute it to the Sweethearts as it is one of their signature pieces. Jump Children also has no sheet music available, so a very lovely and wonderful musician from the community, Emily Westman, who of the Seattle Rock Orchestra, did some arranging for us, as you will see in the program, and so this is our arrangement of Jump Children, Miss Sophia Kowalski.
Stay in the groove, let nothing bother
jump, 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 jump. Thank you.
As you hear, could have easily been the next Jump, Jive, and Wail or Sing, 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 had the women continued to play and later in the era. But unfortunately, at the close of the war, many of the bands had a hard time finding work. The male musicians came back from their tours or services, and many of the houses that would employ these all-female bands basically said, I'm sorry, we're going to take our old house band members back, which in one way was very awesome that they were taking their vets back, and on the other hand, left a lot of women who were playing a lot of great music with nothing and nowhere to go. We're going to take a little detour in tonight's program, and I really wanted to include this artist because she was one of the most, and probably one of the only successful black artists, period, but black female artists to cross into sort of the popular mainstream. Sister Rosetta Tharpe is known as the godmother of rock and roll. And she had her roots, of course, as many of the musicians did, in gospel music or the blues. Some of the more secular blues, and then also the sort of more upbeat blues in the church. And some of the tunes that you widely hear of hers, they all have sort of a spiritual bent. Not only was she a fine vocalist, but she was also an excellent electric guitar player and regular guitar player. So if you haven't ever seen her, check it out. It's pretty awesome to watch her burning away on her little Epiphone SG there in her big fur coat. But I really wanted to, I guess, show the bridge. I think there have been times in music where there's a great divide between jazz and classical and jazz and rock and roll. And really, when we look back at it, we see all the roots coming back from those blues in the fields, sweating, born out of labor and hardship, that eventually found their way into the American living room and Elvis's knee shaking. And it was unfortunate that many of the artists that Elvis himself and many of the white artists that sort of became popular during this time, who they would attribute as their influences, did not actually become as popular or have the financial success or stability that those who were taking their music out to the world did. So this is a tune that was made famous by Sister Rosetta Tharpe and her touring partner for a little while, Marie Knight. Please join me if you want in singing Up Above My Head.
In the air. I hear music in the air. Up above my head. I hear music in the air. Up above my head. Up
I hear trouble in the air.
Up above my head.
Up above my head.
I see trouble in the air.
I hear trouble in the air.
Up above my head.
Up above my head.
I hear trouble in the air.
I hear trouble in the air.
I really do believe
There's a heaven somewhere. Heaven somewhere. Above my head.
You know I hear music in the
I
air.
hear music in the air.
Up above my head. I hear music in the air.
I hear music in the air.
Up above my head.
Up above my head.
I hear music in the
I
air.
hear music in the air. Yes, I really do believe there's a heaven somewhere. Heaven somewhere.
Up above my head.
Up above my head.
You know there's trouble in the air.
There's trouble in the air.
Up above my head.
Up above my head.
There's trouble in the air.
I hear trouble in the air.
Up above my head.
Up above my head.
You know I hear music in the air. I believe, I really do believe there's a heaven somewhere. Heaven somewhere. Up above my head.
Up above my head.
I hear music in the air.
I hear music in the air.
Up above my head.
Up above my head.
I hear music in the air.
I hear music in the air.
Up above my head.
Up above my head. I hear music in the air.
And I really do believe there's a heaven somewhere. Heaven somewhere.
Thank you.
Melba Liston was a remarkable musician because what she did was so musical, and what she did was done so well.
I want to talk about great. She was a great trombone player and a great arranger.
I've been a band leader on many occasions, and it really was a disappointing thing to me to have musicians who I respected not respect some of the women that I hired to play.
Dizzy Gillespie told me that one time his big band was going to be doing a show, and he sent for Melba Liston to do the arrangements. And he wanted her to do the arrangements because he knew of her brilliance. But when he told the cats in the band that he had sent out to the West Coast to bring in Melba Liston to arrange the music, they said, man, what you gotta send all the way out to the West Coast to get some bitch to arrange our music for? Man, come on. He didn't say another word to them. He just waited until the day that she arrived and dropped the charts in front of them. And their mouths dropped open when they started to look at it. Because Melba Liston had an uncanny ability to make a section player feel that they were a soloist. They then understood why he sent out to the West Coast to get that lady, that woman, into New York to arrange that music.
She had the respect of many male players, but she just couldn't seem to find whatever was necessary to make a career. So she finally gave up and went to teach music in Jamaica.
I discovered chords. And Andy used to say to me, "You can't do that. It's against the rules of writing music." I said, "Rules? But I hear a sixth in this chord." And he said, "You can't do it." And I said, "I'm gonna do it." I'm always experimenting. I just can't play the same things the same way night after night. This would make Andy Kirk angry because the band's repertoire consisted of recorded hits, and the solos had to be exactly like those on the records.
She's sort of the band leader without a band. One of the things I don't know about Mary Lou Williams is at the height of her success with Andy Kirk, were agencies coming to her and saying, "You really ought to be leading your own band," the way they did to every male soloist who made a name in a band?
She wants to be known as one of the major key figures in this music. New York provides her something she hasn't had in a while. It's a kind of settled home. Her world has expanded. She's getting to know dancers and writers and artists. And it creates the conditions for a new level of creativity on her part.
Somebody gave a lovely party for Mary Lou. She was the only person I really knew. And I suddenly found myself alone. I set about trying to find Mary Lou. And I found her in a closet. She was sitting in a closet writing music. And she didn't want to be disturbed until she finished what she was writing.
She is basically figuring out a new kind of music for herself. Mary Lou Williams and musicians in the modern movement realize that they're creating a music that exists primarily for listening.
I was hanging out and I heard this music and it was terrific. It seems that these kids had originated something else. It just gave you a sight of a new picture happening in jazz.
Bebop changed everything. Bebop is getting generated underground in basically after-hours jam sessions. Young musicians were saying, we can play faster, we can play more interesting chords. The drummer wasn't just going while you were soloing, he was responding to what you were playing. The bass player, he's now playing melody. And they're creating a music that is so mind-blowing.
Mary Lou Williams' advanced ideas about harmony was intriguing to all of those musicians. Many great musicians borrowed from her material and created compositions of their own. Monk, for instance, a hack and sack from Lady Be Good.
I've heard a few chords of mine played by a few modernists. I became very discouraged in finding that people recorded my ideas if I spoke about them. Even so, I tried to encourage the modernists to continue experimenting because I believed that bebop was here to stay.
Mary Lou Williams wasn't just drawn to the new music, she shaped its development, shaped its harmonic ideas, and was involved in some of the most intense intellectual debates in her apartment about what direction this music ought to go.
She was a centerpiece for the music. What she represents is a fierce sense of self and being able to hold on to that, but then transcend era at the same time.
So this is a woman who worked consistently in a punishing, unforgiving environment of one-nighters, of people wanting you to be on, people wanting you to be what they wanted you to be. That really took a toll on her.
She gave up the music. He was one of the great musicians in jazz, And nobody was paying any attention to her. She was working, of course, because she was good and people wanted to hear her. But that wasn't enough for her, and it shouldn't have been enough for the public.
She walked out of this Parisian nightclub, and for 3 years, no one knew where Mary Lou was. In 1957, Mary Lou finally reemerges. And at that point in time, you know, she was really adamant about not wanting to perform again. Dizzy Gillespie, probably one of the only people who could have gotten Mary Lou to actually come out of this hiatus at the time. You know, he convinced her, you know, that her greatest gift to the world was jazz. That this wasn't somebody who just gave up on the music. She converts to Catholicism. You look at everything after that point, and it's very different from everything that was before that.
She met a Catholic priest who convinced her that she should not give up, but rather use that talent. You know, if he gave you that, then you should do something with it.
I'm working with these kids down at the community center. I teach them jazz singing, and they really love it.
I have a dream. Yes, a dream. Listen, oh Lord, when I pray, my people shall be free. There will be love from north to south, from mountain top. Let freedom ring. We shall be free. I have a dream.
When you see the images of the time that it was during the 50s and 60s, it's hard to imagine the adversity that she must have faced, being not only a female but black, and trying to push the edges of a genre that people had grown quite comfortable in claiming as the American musical heritage. We're quite glad that she returned in 1957. We're going to do a number of hers she wrote in 1959. And even if in its simple blues shuffle you'll hear that harmonic complexity that they were talking about in the clip. One small note, while I was doing some research for this program, I actually happened to encounter a clip of her teaching Mr. Rogers to scat. And I don't know if you were like I was when I was a kid. I used to tune into that show all the time, and I do vaguely remember the jazz episode. I remember it because it caught my attention for the music, but I had always thought that was Ella Jenkins. I think that's because that's sort of where my head was at the time. My mom had a lot of Ella Jenkins playing, but it's gratifying to know that she was spreading the word far and wide and in any means. So please enjoy our rendition of Chunkalunka. In putting this show together, first conceptualizing the idea about, we knew that Mary Lou Williams has a decent body of work that's either you can rent from the university, I think Rutgers, and then some in print that you can purchase. I went about looking at all the different publishing companies to see what was available to buy. Melba Liston, they talked a lot about her gorgeous arrangements and harmonies, and in the commercial realm, you can buy 3 of her pieces. And so with Mary Lou Williams, there's actually, if you are a band, maybe a high school band director, and you're looking to maybe start down that road of expanding your library, there's actually still not a whole lot of commercially available music unless you are willing to go through the hoops and hurdles of renting or borrowing from academia. One artist that does have a decent repertoire, but as I noted to the band, a lot of her music is what they call archived, which means that it's only printed in special cases, which means that there's not a lot of it sitting around on shelves for people to look at and try out and purchase or play and purchase. But Toshiko Akiyoshi is a jazz musician who started in Japan, and right around the 50s she heard some jazz and was hooked. So she started playing jazz, and one night in 1952 Oscar Peterson heard her playing in a nightclub in Ginza and said, she just really blew him away, and he said, we need to record you. So he brought an American producer over, and he used his rhythm section to Japan and recorded her in 1953. In 1955, she applied to attend Berklee School of Music in Boston. You know, Berklee is well known for its innovation and also its multiculturalism and international nature today. I think they have a campus in Spain and might have one in another country as well. But if you imagine in 1955, a woman from Japan asking to come to the United States to study, we were only 10 years out of World War II, in a country that basically interned its own citizens of Japanese descent merely for the fact of their race. So sometimes I try to imagine she was granted a year later, after all the hoops and hurdles to get to the United States. In 1956 she did attend Berklee and obviously has had a long career. She's still performing and out there today with her husband Lou Tabakin. But I have to imagine that time from 1950s, maybe even longer, what it was like for her to be in a different country, one of the first Japanese student at Berklee, but also one of the first international students there, in a country in the era of McCarthy and where we weren't quite in civil rights yet. And what amazing energy and dedication and passion it must have taken to persevere, to continue to write, to produce the works that she has available today. So this is probably one of the favorite tunes that I have heard, even in most of the repertoire that I played with bands, and it's a lot. This is a nice little modern waltz, let's say. Please enjoy A Song for a Harvest.
purpose and your goal is in front of you and you're doing something that you feel strongly about and something that you love, all the stuff you might have to encounter is just stuff you have to encounter. But the women's movement and the fact that by the time I was out there, there was this consciousness about possibilities, and that in all facets of life and all facets of business, you were beginning to see that the idea about what a woman could or couldn't do be broken down. So it really knocks me out when the women come and really come with it.
I don't know of any men that are doing what Maria Schneider's doing. She really has created her own sound, and she's a person that's carving out the future of larger group music in jazz.
I never ever thought of myself as being a woman doing what I'm doing. When I put out my first record, Evanescence, I still remember a journalist came over and he said, "What's it like to be a woman composer?" And I said, "What's it like to be a male journalist?" I think it was a Women in Jazz festival, and I was really excited because Terry Lynn Carrington was playing drums, Ingrid Jensen, who plays in my band, Joanne Brackeen was playing piano. And then the band, all the horns were all men. So we were playing the concert, and it was just killing. I mean, Ingrid was playing her butt off, and Terry Lynn, I mean, it was amazing. And I was standing to the side watching Ingrid solo and watching the rhythm section play. All the guys who were the horn players were just looking on. And they were all just like leaning forward and totally grooving on how heavy the music was. And it got me kind of choked up because I was thinking, wow, that's not something you see very often.
As we come to the end of your evening, I did have a question. How many of you have been to a concert that basically had all female composers with all female musicians? I'm not talking about, the singer-songwriter night where there's two ladies with their guitars. How many of you, let me see. Yeah, maybe a couple of you hopefully were in the audience with me when SWJO played their gig at Earshot. I think the last time I remember somebody presenting all female composers with all women was at a couple of years at Earshot where SWJO did some Mary Lou Williams and Robin Holcomb. And I kind of take the tack that perhaps, I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that when she was asked, well, when will it be enough? How many women do you need on the Supreme Court? And she said, 9. I'm pretty sure that was her. And they said, well, 9, doesn't that seem like a lot? And she pretty deadpan said, well, there have been 9 men all these years and nobody's thought a thing about it. So I hope, if nothing else, that you stop and ask yourself when you attend some programs, especially in the jazz realm, but any in the music industry, how many women am I hearing? How many artists of color, international artists am I hearing? And not really to keep count, but just to note, because there are tons of fine musicians, amazing number of fine pieces and players that are out there. And if we don't ask why we don't see them, then they will continue to be invisible, and we will continue to be a novelty. This type of concert will be groundbreaking, which I hope one day it will not be so groundbreaking. So we're talking a little bit about Maria Schneider's wonderful orchestral pieces. This is a little early on. I love the score. It has a really lovely 90s photo of her. You can really gauge the era by the headshot you get in the score. But this tune is a little nod to the blues. It's a nod to bebop, and it's a pretty cooking tune that I think you could dance to. So please enjoy Bird Count.
realized it, you know, a few years ago, that all my idols have been men. No teacher ever talked to me about Mary Lou Williams or Marian McPartland.
I didn't know who the Sweethearts of Rhythm were. I didn't know who Vi Red was. I didn't know any of that.
The first pianist that I saw, jazz pianist, was Terry Pollard. And she was playing with Terry Gibbs at the time. And I'll just never forget the intensity of seeing her on stage and how fierce she was. And it was like, wow, there's a place for me in this music, you know, from seeing her.
I've seen some stunning young women coming up. And I have to admit to you, one of the things I love about them is that there isn't even the inkling that there's anything that they can't do. There's just complete confidence and comfort with themselves about who they are as women and what they're going to do in the world.
Yeah, I think we're going to see the music grow immensely. And instead of trying to approach it, women coming to a man's world, maybe that's the difference. We kind of all realize, like, this is not a man's game. If you really look at the facts, it's our game, you know. You know, we're creators. We are creators.
I really want to thank once again STG and the Neptune Theater production team for hosting this evening, the Nights at the Neptune. To Carol Bash and Judy Chaikin, and actually a foundation that gave us a grant to get some music as it was archived. It was quite expensive, Lucky 7 Foundation. Thank you to them. Thank you to Emily Westman for arranging for us music that we could not find in print. I really also want to thank these musicians on stage who, after nearly, I think I'm going on 8-9 years with this group, that they kind of know that sometimes I'll just get a wild hair and let's do this. And they're like, okay. And I really appreciate them putting in the time. We really, we conceived of this thinking that maybe we would do this in the fall if we didn't do Nights at the Neptune. And then we just put the pedal to the metal and really had a few months with this music. And so hopefully, I hope that we will have the opportunity to present it again. Thank you to all of you for braving the traffic that was this evening. Many of us arrived a little bit late ourselves, just trying to get through from work, but thank you for supporting these community events and just for supporting music in the Seattle community. So we do have one little tasty treat to end with, and please feel free to get up and dance. 1, 2, dancers. We'll pretend that we planned that. This is Laurie Shepard. And Brooke Leary. Lisa Vallon. And Eileen Wilson. Joanne Hartline. Miss Liz Abel on trombone. And Kelsey Jobst. Karen Matheson. Liana Green. And on trumpet, Miss Janice Deckman. And Lena Console. Katie Green. Andrea Stritz. And Debbie Dawson. Miss Sophia Kowalski. Carol Levin on harp. Brittany Cole on keys. That's Sue Spang on bass. gentlemen, the MoodSwings. Please drive safely getting home. Have a wonderful evening, and please come back to the other nights at the Neptune performances.